you have to love every character you play. Low self-esteem, big ego. I loved it.
Did you know the kids don't have school today?
I'm at work. Why can't they be with you?
I've got things to do.
What things? Like what? That's a lot of money.
I've been a follower of Kelly's work for a little while. I was in New York, I'm trying to think, I guess 2 years ago, and I was doing publicity for a film called La Quimera, which she had seen, and so we met up in New York and we just had a chat about the Mastermind. And it was, the kind of, probably as soon as Kelly said, I'd like to work with you, the answer was already set in stone. But I remember reading the script, and what I loved about it was the sort of, the kind of mundane heist movie of someone who is sort of reasonably normal and just kind of gets himself into this sort of useless situation. Just hear me out. It's a big life-changing opportunity for me, but I'd have to rent a workspace and purchase tools which I don't have. I suppose the motive for the art heist is just that he, I don't know, I think he has these sorts of notions of grandeur in a way that, I've described it before and sort of tried to articulate it as something which many of us recognize, which is this combination of low self-esteem, big ego, I think he probably wishes he could have been this greater success as an artist maybe, and hasn't worked out for him, and so this is his great grand plan that's kind of going to make his name. I think that's what it is. You don't look like cops.
Say, James, we've been told that you're mixed up in this robbery.
I sure don't know how you got down this road. You got the wrong idea. I'm afraid you got some bad information. Yeah, I loved it. It's that thing of, Kelly's films have a rhythm to them. But you're right that there are moments, I can think of two sequences in the movie where, we're used to having cuts, We see someone trying to lift 4 paintings in a box up a ladder onto a platform. Normally you might see the first one, or a section of the first one, and then cut to 5 minutes later, and he's sort of up there finishing the job. Kelly's like, no, we'll play the 5 minutes. Let's see what it looks like, and what it does is it's intriguing. I as an audience member, I find watching people really interesting, and how people navigate the world, and so to play those moments for real and to play them at the pace in which they're played in reality is really great, and that's a credit to Kelly, who sort of allows the space to do that.
What do you say we stop talking about it for now, because I find it kind of upsetting.
Yeah, I'm good with that.
How do you successfully play like a likable criminal? Was that like a conscious decision?
No, I don't think so. First of all, you have to love every character you play, and so you have to think that what they're doing is right and just, and so, or whether it's just, I don't know, but you have to have sort of strong convictions when you're playing a character. My dad, I kind of got into Shakespeare because my dad used to take us, me and my brothers, and to the theatre, and he'd often explain the plays on the way there so that it wasn't we weren't caught up in the language. And one of his he was an English teacher, one of his great sort of theories and that he'd tell me about were the Shakespeare villains, that, Edmund, Iago, Richard III, all these, Macbeth, all these characters, they believe what they're doing is right. And so the likability is that we're with him the whole way, and if you introduce an audience to someone, you say, we're going to sit with this person the whole way through for the next hour and a half, you're going to like them, hopefully.